I'd like this quick take to adopt the form of what is called a pep talk. Now, if you're not familiar with a pep talk, because I think that's kind of an American idea, it's a short talk that's supposed to get people feeling better, to get them kind of jazzed up, to help them to resolve to do something. And the topic that I'm going to talk about here is one that I think a lot of people can, in fact, use a pep talk on, especially when it comes to philosophy. So a lot of my students, quite a few lifelong learners, will express sentiments of feeling intimidated. That's the word that one person used recently when approaching philosophical works. And this can extend more broadly to classic works of literature and all sorts of other things. And the idea is there's this feeling that comes with it that might hold a person back from actually engaging with those works. And we could use other similar feelings like fear or anxiety, a sense of perhaps even shame or guilt or embarrassment, that modality of emotion, a kind of reticence that stands in the way of cracking open the book and starting on the path and adventure of reading. And this can indeed apply to a lot of works. It came up in relation to the Brothers Karamazov, which is a very philosophical piece of literature by Fyodor Dostoevsky, who many people consider to be, one of the greatest of Russian writers. So you can see the bar is set pretty high, and that can promote a sense of, not feeling at ease in going about studying these texts. And I actually solicited some, ideas about what people feel anxious or reticent or intimidated about. I'm also drawing on my own experience, having taught students for more than 20 years now and having been a student myself. And so there's a number of common themes that come up, and I'm just going to run through them, and you might find yourself relating to these. So people ask themselves when they're approaching a work of philosophy, like, Kant's Critique of Pure Reason or René Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy, am I smart enough? Do I have what it takes, or am I not smart enough to be able to get anything out of the work? And there's a closely related worry as well. What if other people who are clearly getting something out of this work, what if I can't keep up with them? What if I'm not having the same kind of insights as they are? There's other worries about these works having technical terminology. What do all these words mean? Am I going to be able to wade through them? Or having a complex structure, whether at the level of the paragraph or the chapter or the book itself. And, there's also this worry, oh man, these thoughts are really deep. Will I be able to get them? Am I the kind of person who can make sense out of these things? There's also concerns about, maybe there's a whole background that I need to know before I jump into these so that I'll get something out of it. There's others who express concerns like, am I supposed to understand this all right away? If I don't understand it right away, then is there something wrong with me? How can I proceed if I don't understand the first parts of what I'm reading? Do I have to stay there until I understand it before I move on to the next? There's also concerns about not understanding all these matters as quickly as other students at least appear to be understanding it. And, there's also a worry, maybe I'll understand things, but I'll actually understand it wrong. I'll get things mixed up. I'll misunderstand things, and I'll damage my mind or my progress. Pick whatever you want. These are all legitimate concerns in some ways, but in other ways, they're the sort of thing that I think if you pick at and you question, you'll find some of these going away. So if these are things that have been hitting you, the first thing I want to say is, hey, that's okay. A lot of people go through that, including myself. When I'm approaching something that's way out of my field, philosophy is a very vast set of disciplines. I might feel some of these concerns myself, but we don't have to allow ourselves to be, you could say, disabled or guided by these. One thing I do want to say is that I think a lot of people, or at least I suspect a lot of people, probably have these worries weighing on them, in part because of their past experiences. And some of those past experiences could have been, reading a book and not understanding it and feeling kind of foolish or stupid or not as good as other people as a result. But I think a lot of it comes from negative experiences with other people, like teachers, for example, saying, "What's wrong with you? Can't you get this?" And very often it's a sign of a bad teacher. Or, having social critics or opinion formers tell us how wonderful these books are, particularly people from the elites who had the opportunity to study with private tutors and, have the confidence building things in their life, allowing them to have that sort of sense. By the way, I'll tell you one thing, elites don't understand these books any better than anybody else does. Or it could be your own peers, particularly if you're in an intellectual group. There's sometimes like jockeying for position and people talking a lot of smack at each other. I don't know how many times I've seen people in various forums criticize each other for not understanding Hegel when none of them actually understand Hegel, and they're just making each other kind of feel bad and posturing, sort of like virgins who, talk about their sexual experiences that they've never actually had. So, if that's been the case, then, when you hear these voices arising, realize that they have an origin and push them aside. The result of these worries can sometimes be that people won't read texts at all, or they'll wait until the last minute because they're so anxious about not screwing it up, and then they try to blaze their way through the text, and it doesn't come off well. So, sometimes people don't read the texts, or they don't allow themselves enough time to read them, or they do so and they feel crappy while they're doing it because they're always worried, when's the next shoe going to drop? Something's going to happen I don't understand. And it takes away a lot of joy, and it takes away a lot of excitement and engagement that should be there for you as you're reading great works of philosophical literature. When you're reading Plato's Symposium or Descartes' Meditations or Mary Wollstonecraft's Vindication of the Rights of Women, it's going to be difficult, but there should also be something in you responding that is a kind of joy. And if that doesn't happen right away, that's okay. It doesn't have to happen right away. That's another kind of pressure you can take off your shoulders. So what can you do? I'm going to give you a couple pointers that might be useful for some of you. This is part of the Pep Talk. Take the pressure off of yourself. You don't have to understand everything right away. You're okay. You're doing good by putting yourself into it. Just like the person who goes to the gym, they're not going to bench 450 right away or press whatever they're going to do on the leg press. They have to work at it, and that's perfectly normal. Going to the gym, putting in the time, that's the thing that really matters. If you find yourself engaging in negative self-talk and running yourself down, talk back to that. Say, well, how do you know that I don't understand things? How do you know that I'm never going to really make any sense of this? Talk back to your inner voice, because your inner voice, it's not the oracle or something like that. And you can also tell yourself that it's okay that you do feel intimidated or anxious. That's fine. Lots of people feel that way. You don't have to allow that to control you. You can read the works whether you feel a certain way or not, and your feelings don't have to dominate you. Remind yourself as well, if you are feeling these things, that this is natural and normal. It's just like approaching any other thing. You're going to learn an instrument, you're going to learn a language, you're going to go into a very different social setting. You're going to feel a little bit out of sorts, but if you spend some time there and you get your footing, as we say, you'll start to feel better about it, and you will be able to learn something and understand something and get something out of the texts. So the last thing that I want to say, and this is sort of the rah-rah pep thing, is if you've got a book that you have been leaving on the shelf and not opening up because, you're worried about whether you can actually understand it, crack it open. What's the worst that can happen, right? You start reading it and it's, Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit and you're confused. You're like everybody else and that's okay. Just, keep working at it. Persevere. Keep coming back to it. And you are capable of understanding something. Nobody, when it comes to these great works of classic literature, nobody gets everything that's going on the first time or the 10th time or even the 100th time. I don't know how many times I've read through and even taught some of these works, and I find something new quite often coming back to them myself. And I do so in conversation with others where they're also surprised as well. So take a little pressure off yourself and go ahead and try. You are capable of studying philosophy.